Ever since I was a little kid, I've suffered from what I now recognise are anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't realise obviously this is what they were, and I just put it down retrospectively just to hypochondria. Yeah, relatively regularly, maybe once every few months, I would come down ill. Feeling, really sort of nauseous and things like that, and faint and dizzy and not being able to catch my breath and whatnot. But it passed very, very quickly, and as soon as it passed, I sort of realised I was just being daft and it was all in my head. And I just put it down to sort of growing up, and it's a bit sad because in certain ways it did kind of ruin my childhood, I suppose, because it was like a spectre sort of constantly leering over my shoulder, when was the next one going to arrive? And of course the worst thing, as anybody who suffers from anxiety attacks will tell you, is that even while you're having an anxiety attack, you know it's just in your mind and you're not really ill, but it doesn't make the symptoms any less real, which means it causes a catch-22 situation. During my teens, I also started getting quite bad migraine headaches, like really bad, like the whole side of my face would go numb, and I didn't take my medication in time. I'd be like puking everywhere and whatnot, and I had to lie down in a darkened room, and they sort of wiped me out for days at a time. Now, touch wood, there's wood down here. I haven't had a migraine for a good few years, and the last few ones I've had were very mild. So I'm kind of hoping that I've grown out of those. But the anxiety attacks remain, unfortunately, and they can strike at pretty much any time. Less so when I'm in familiar situations. I've never had one. No, I tell a lie, actually. I have had a few at home. I've had a couple recently in the middle of the night, actually, which is very strange. Just waking up in the middle of the night, obviously worrying about something subconsciously, and just feeling just as sick as a dog, to the point where, I'm trying to make myself, be ill just for the sake of having done something, because it's just so terrible to feel that bad with no real sort of resolution or end in sight. It really is very desperate. It's very lonely sort of feeling to have, really, and it's pretty bad. And of course, the worst thing is it's not just having the anxiety attacks; it's the fear of having the anxiety attacks that kind of, if you're not careful, can control your life. I mean, you could let it stop you from enjoying yourself, or stop you from, even leaving the house in certain ways. You could say, well, I don't really want to go, 50 miles to see a gig, because what about if, when I'm at the venue, I have an anxiety attack and I'm so far away from home and my safe place and whatnot. And I try very hard not to let them influence my decisions like that. And I've got a few pretty good sort of, I suppose you'd call them self-help books, which have really helped me to rationalise them and just sort of think to myself, well, you may or you may not, but chances are you probably won't. And I'm kind of determined not to let the anxiety attacks ruin my sort of adult life in the way that I felt that they sort of ruined my childhood, really. You don't get your childhood back. And I'm not going to say that my entire childhood was miserable, but I will say I was a pretty nervy, stressed out, highly strung little kid. And I'm still pretty highly strung now, but I tend to channel it into sort of creative ventures and things like that. Well, I didn't have the outlet when I was a little kid. I was just pretty much on my own. And because you think you're the only person in the entire world to suffer from this, but I mean, there are millions of people out there. You might even be one of them watching this video, and you're kind of sympathising with me now. And you sort of say, yes, that's me, and it is quite reassuring to know that there are other people out there suffering just like you. They can't help you, but it's still all up here in your head, and there's no, I don't know of any cure that's ever worked, therapy or whatever. I'm British, we don't really do therapy anyway. I'm from Yorkshire, so we don't even really do feelings, if I'm being honest with you. So it's just something that we've got to man up and live with, really, which I'm cool with. I've got enough stuff in my life that I'm really happy with. I'm not a miserable person. I've got nothing to be particularly unhappy about. If this is the only cross I have to bear, then so be it. There's a lot of people worse off than I am. I'm just grateful for what I've got. But it is worth just mentioning it every now and then, just so that people do realise that other people out there are suffering in a similar way. There's a lot of famous people who suffer from anxiety attacks, and some of them have been brave enough to come out and actually mention it. I mentioned Insane Clown Posse a couple of videos back. Well, Violent J actually had to be pulled off stage at one point after suffering a pretty severe anxiety attack, and I've not heard anything since, but he's addressed it on record and things like that. They've discussed it and things, so that must be quite good if you're in the fringe of society, and you're listening to sort of niche music and you find out one of your musical idols is suffering as you are. I mean, Andy Partridge of XTC, the British band from the 80s, the 1780s, famously can't perform live anymore due to stage fright, which is of course related to anxiety attacks and whatnot. And there's a lot of famous people like that who managed to, despite having this sort of problem, have very good careers and lives and stuff like that. So it's not a deal breaker, but it is a pain in the arse. I don't know. There's nothing which you can really say about it apart from they do exist. I do suffer from them. I probably always will. I don't know what the cause is. I don't think there's any cure. But if, like me, you do suffer from them, just take my advice and try and put them out of your mind. Just realise when you're having one that that's all it is. Ride it out. It's only a few hours. Just ride it out, and know that at the end of it, you're going to be okay. The only thing I found that works for me when I feel sort of one coming on and I'm feeling very stressed is I think ahead to the next time I'm going to be safe and happy, which might be the next time I'm at home watching television on the sofa with my wife or something. I will mentally project to that and imagine how I'm going to feel then, and know that that time is coming up, and that does tend to calm me down a bit. So you might want to try that. I find it also helps for things like dentist appointment and things. If you focus to the point when if you're leaving the house and you're really stressed out, focus to the point when you're unlocking the door having returned, and know that that time is going to arrive inevitably, and it does help to put things a little bit in perspective. If you've got any hints or tips as to how you deal with your anxiety attacks, or if you know people in your family or your friends who do suffer from them and you found anything that helps them, please post as a comment on this video and share with us. That'd be excellent. But yeah, that's all there is for today. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.